The galaxy had been burning for over 300 years. Two great factions, the Zyre Dominion and the Vul Confederacy, had fought so long that no one remembered why the war had started. Entire planets had turned to lifeless ruins. Fleets had clashed, millions had died, and yet there was no end in sight. In the cold depths of space, another battle raged. Battle over Kelta-4. Captain Ralvik of the Vul Confederacy stood on the bridge of his battleship, watching the holographic battle map. The Zyre fleet had them surrounded. Blue and red markers blinked as ships were destroyed. Shields at 20%. An officer reported. Ralvik gritted his teeth. Divert power from the lower decks. Keep us in the fight. Outside, lasers and plasma fire tore through the darkness. Ships exploded into flames, sending debris scattering like shattered glass. The Veil forces were outgunned, outnumbered, and out of options. The Zyre had brought in their dreadnoughts. Massive warships, bristling with weapons, cutting through the Veil lines like a scythe. Sir, Zyre flagship Kovacs Wrath is locking onto us. Ralvik's fists clenched. This was it. Captain. Another officer shouted. We are detecting something, an unknown signal, deep in the Forbidden Sector. Ralvik's eyes narrowed. The Forbidden Sector. No one spoke of it. No one went there. It was where humanity had once lived. Long ago, the humans had disappeared, vanished without a trace. But before they left, they sealed off their worlds. Any ship that entered was never seen again. A whisper spread across the bridge. Is it them? Someone muttered. Humans are gone, another said. They'd been gone for centuries. But Ralvik knew one thing. The Zyre would not ignore this signal. If there was even a chance that it was a weapon or technology left behind by humanity, they would take it. And that could mean the end of the war, or something far worse. Ralvik made a decision. Set a course for the Forbidden Sector. The officers froze. Sir, that space is. Do it. The Veil battleship's engines flared to life. They turned and fled the battle, heading toward the unknown. Zyre High Command, a deadly discovery. On the Zyre command ship, Admiral Sorak watched in silence. His insectoid eyes narrowed as he saw the Veil battleship retreating. Where are they going? He asked. An officer analyzed the trajectory. The Forbidden Sector. The bridge fell silent. A slow, uneasy feeling spread through the crew. Sorak had studied ancient records. He knew what that place was. The last time a fleet had dared to enter that space, they sent a single message before disappearing forever. We woke them up. Sorak turned to his second-in-command. Prepare a fleet. If the Veil are going there, we follow. The war was forgotten. Something far more important was happening, and deep in the shadows of space, something was listening. The Veil battleship Shadow Spear slipped through the darkness of space, moving toward a place no one dared to go. Captain Ralvik stood on the bridge, staring at the holographic map. The Forbidden Sector was silent, lifeless. No stars, no planets, only an unnatural darkness. Approaching the sector's edge, the helmsman reported. Ralvik felt a chill crawl up his spine. No ship that entered here had ever returned. Full sensor sweep, he ordered. The scanners activated, sending out invisible waves of energy. Seconds later, alarms blared across the ship. Sir, there's something here. Ralvik turned sharply. What do you mean? The officer's hands trembled as he adjusted the controls. Massive objects, all around us. No energy signatures, no movement. But they're here. The crew stared at the main view screen as the ship's powerful lights pierced the darkness. And then they saw them. Titanic warships, thousands of them. They drifted silently, their black hulls covered in dust and debris, as if they had been sleeping for centuries. They were larger than any known battleship, colossal, monstrous, untouched by time. Symbols covered their hulls, symbols that every species in the galaxy feared, the insignia of humanity. A whisper of disbelief spread across the bridge. They're still here. Zero Fleet, following the Shadow Spear. Admiral Xorek's fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Forbidden Sector. The moment they arrived, every sensor failed. Status report. Xorek barked. Sir, we've lost all long-range communications. Something is blocking us, an officer stammered. Xorek's claws clicked together in frustration. It was as if the void itself was swallowing them. Sir, another officer whispered, we have visual contact on the Veil ship. They've stopped. They've found something. Xorek's many eyes narrowed. Put it on the screen. The image appeared, and for the first time in his life, Admiral Xorek felt fear. A graveyard of warships surrounded the Veil vessel, but they were no ordinary ships. They were human. The bridge fell silent. One of his officers spoke in a hushed voice. Sir, I thought humanity was gone. Xorek's grip tightened around the command rail. So did I. The Silent Awakening. Aboard the Shadow Spear, Captain Ralvik barely breathed. His crew was paralyzed with fear. Sir, the communications officer whispered. There's something else. Ralvik turned. What is it? The distress signal. It wasn't just a signal. The officer swallowed hard. It was a command. Before Ralvik could ask what he meant, the lights flickered. A deep mechanical hum echoed through space. And then the warships moved. Engines roared to life. Hulls shimmered as power flowed through them. The forgotten fleet was waking up. The silence of the Forbidden Sector shattered. One by one, the colossal human warships came to life. Engines hummed. Shields flickered. Weapons powered up. On the Shadow Spear's bridge, Captain Ralvik stared in horror. Impossible, he whispered. His crew sat frozen, watching the sleeping giants awaken. These were not just old wrecks. They were functional, deadly, ready for war. Sir, the comms officer cried, we're receiving a transmission. Ralvik's heart pounded. From where? The officer's face turned pale. From every single one of those ships. The bridge fell into dead silence. Zero Fleet. The rising storm. Admiral Xorek gripped the command rail of his flagship, staring in shock. The human warships had been lifeless for centuries. Now, they moved with terrifying precision. Analysis, he barked. An officer's claws trembled over the console. Sir, those ships are not fully crewed. Their systems are operating autonomously, guided by an unknown artificial intelligence. Xorek's mandibles clicked together in frustration. Send a probe, he ordered. A small Zero drone shot forward, flying toward one of the monstrous warships. It got within a kilometer. A warning blared across the Zero fleet. Unauthorized approach, DETCTED. Retreat, IMEDVI. Xorek's eyes widened. Did they just speak to us? Before anyone could react, the nearest human warship fired. A single beam of energy sliced through the void, vaporizing the probe instantly. The Zyre bridge fell into dead silence. Admiral, an officer whispered, what do we do? Xorek didn't answer. For the first time in his life, he felt small. The message from the past. On the Shadow Spear, the incoming transmission finally connected. A holographic figure appeared. An old human admiral. His uniform still crisp, his eyes cold as steel. But he did not move. He was just a recording. If you are receiving this message, then the worst has happened. Ralvik's breath caught in his throat. We are the last fleet of humanity. We were ordered to sleep, to wait, until the day we were needed once more. The Admiral's voice grew darker. If you have awakened us, then war has returned to the galaxy. And we will finish it. The hologram vanished. A sudden shockwave rocked the Shadow Spear as the entire human fleet turned toward them. Weapons locked on. And then, for the first time in 300 years, the Forgotten Fleet prepared to unleash its wrath. The galaxy trembled as the Forgotten Fleet came alive, its ancient warships moving with terrifying precision. The ship's engines roared to life, the once dormant vessels now awake and ready to fight. The Zyre fleet, hovering at the edge of the forbidden sector, felt the shift. Captain Ralvik stood at the command center of the Shadow Spear, his mind racing. The transmission they had received from the human admiral still echoed in his thoughts. War has returned to the galaxy, and we will finish it. Ralvik's instincts screamed at him to leave, to retreat, but his feet were rooted to the floor. These were human ships, the ones that had once controlled the galaxy, the ones that had disappeared, leaving behind a legacy of power and mystery. "Sir," the communications officer said nervously, "the Zur are approaching. Their ships are moving toward us. They're preparing for battle." Ralvik nodded. He knew the Zur would not back down. But now, they were no longer the biggest threat. The Zur fleet, defiance in the face of destruction. Admiral Xorak paced his flagship, his many eyes narrowed in thought. The message from the human admiral had sent a chill down his spine, and the unspeakable power of the human warships filled him with dread. But the Zur were not known for fear. They had conquered countless races, taken planets, and crushed civilizations. They were ruthless. They would not run. "Prepare the weapons," Xorak barked. "We will strike first. Their ships may be massive, but they are ancient. We can destroy them." His officers scrambled to carry out his orders, sending commands to launch the Zur fleet's full offensive. The Zyre dreadnoughts loomed like giants in the distance, their weapons charging up. The Zyre believed they were still the superior force, even against these awakened giants. The human fleet, unstoppable fury. The human warships, though dormant for centuries, were in no way outdated. Their systems powered up with unnatural speed. Every ship, every weapon, every sensor came online with flawless precision. The forgotten fleet seemed to breathe with life again, as if it had never slept at all. The flagship, the Titan Ark, a massive vessel the size of a small moon, sent out a single pulse of energy across the sector. It wasn't a weapon, it was a signal, a command, and in the vastness of space, the entire human fleet responded. One by one, the warships moved into formation. Captain Ralvik's eyes widened as he watched the display. "They're organized. They've been waiting for us." The officer beside him spoke with a tone of awe. Ralvik couldn't tear his eyes from the view screen. The human ships were no longer inanimate objects. They were alive, driven by a singular will. Their weapons were ready. Zyre dreadnoughts fired first. Thousands of powerful energy beams shot toward the nearest human ships. The Zyre believed that their sheer firepower would overwhelm the ancient vessels. But the humans were prepared. As the beams neared their targets, the human ships shifted into motion. Their shields flared up, glowing bright like a star. The beams struck with immense force, but the human shields absorbed every shot. The ships didn't even falter. In that instant, the tide shifted. The first clash. The human fleet retaliated. The Titan Ark raised its massive weapons and unleashed a barrage of missiles that seemed to tear apart the fabric of space itself. Energy pulses surged through the Zyre lines, obliterating their front ships in a single sweep. The Zyre flagship, Kovac's Wrath, charged forward, undeterred. Xorak stood on the bridge, watching his ships engage the human fleet with all their might. "Return fire," Xorak yelled, his mandibles clicking. But even as his fleet poured every ounce of firepower into the human ships, it was clear the humans had returned. They were no longer the ones in hiding. They were the galaxy's true rulers. One of the human ships, a massive dreadnought, fired a concentrated beam of energy, tearing through the front lines of the Zyre fleet. The Zyre ships that weren't destroyed instantly were crippled beyond repair. The Zyre had never faced an opponent like this. The human awakening. Ralvik's hand tightened around the command rail. His ship was caught between two forces, the Zyre and the human fleet. But the humans weren't just defending. They were attacking. Their warships surged forward, cutting through the Zur with an unstoppable fury. And then, a deep voice filled the communication channel. It was the same voice from the transmission, the human admiral. "This galaxy belongs to humanity," the voice echoed. "And we will bring the final judgment." Ralvik's heart skipped a beat. The humans were not interested in peace. They had returned to conquer, to finish the war that had long since left the galaxy. They were not just participants. They were the masters. The galaxy seemed to hold its breath as the battle raged on. On one side, the Zira fleet fought with everything they had left, their weapons charging up and unleashing torrents of energy. On the other side, the human fleet moved with an eerie precision, as if each ship were an extension of a single mind. The Forgotten Fleet was more than just a collection of ships. It was a testament to the raw, unrelenting power of humanity. Captain Ralvik watched in growing horror as the Zira fleet was decimated. "Sir," the communications officer yelled, barely able to keep up with the chaos. "The Zur are retreating. They're falling back." Ralvik's eyes narrowed. He knew the Zur wouldn't give up easily. But this was something different. It wasn't just a defeat. It was a collapse, a complete unraveling of their will. "Continue the assault," Ralvik barked, though his voice lacked conviction. He wasn't sure what the Zur had left to give. He wasn't sure how they could recover. "Zir command, desperate measures." Admiral Xorak was shaking. The Zire fleet had suffered catastrophic losses. His flagship, the Kovik's Wrath, was heavily damaged, its hull riddled with burn marks from the human warship's relentless assault. The remaining Zire dreadnoughts were scattered, struggling to maintain cohesion. "All units, fall back to the outer rim," Xorak ordered. His voice was hoarse, filled with frustration. "We cannot win this battle. We must regroup." But his officers were looking at him with something he had never seen before. Fear. "Admiral, the humans. They're too strong," one officer said, his voice trembling. "We cannot match their firepower." Xorak clenched his fists. He had led the Zur through countless battles. He had conquered planets, wiped out entire civilizations. But these humans, with their awakened fleet, were a force beyond anything he had ever encountered. We have to survive," Xorak muttered to himself, his eyes darting between the wreckage of his fleet and the approaching human warships. He made the decision then. It was a final gamble. "Activate the fleeing protocol," Xorak ordered. "All remaining ships, prepare to jump to the Dark Zone." The Dark Zone was a mysterious, dangerous region of space, known for its unpredictable gravitational anomalies. No one had dared to enter it in millennia. But it was their only hope now. The Zire ships began to power their engines, attempting to break through the human assault. Some ships managed to escape into the vast reaches of the Dark Zone, but many others, too slow, too damaged, were caught in the onslaught. The human warships destroyed them with terrifying efficiency. The human fleet, unyielding power. On the bridge of the Titan Ark, Admiral Garius watched as the last remnants of the Zira fleet disappeared into the Dark Zone. He didn't feel victory. Not yet. The battle wasn't over. But for the first time in centuries, the galaxy had seen what humanity was capable of. "Status report," Garius commanded. "All Zira units in this sector have been neutralized," his officer replied, voice steady despite the intensity of the battle. "We've suffered minimal damage. The fleet is intact and ready for further action." "Good." Garius's tone was cold. "Prepare to advance. The Zira may have retreated, but they will not forget this. We must take the fight to them." The Titan Ark rumbled as its engines flared to life once again. The fleet, humanity's fleet, was unstoppable. The galaxy shakes. As the human fleet moved forward, the galaxy trembled. Ralvik couldn't tear his eyes away from the holographic display. His thoughts raced. Was this truly happening? Were the humans truly here, back from the brink of history, to reclaim the galaxy? The Zire had fallen, but their retreat was only the beginning. There were other forces in the galaxy, other races, other civilizations that would not sit idly by while humanity reclaimed its place as the dominant force. The human fleet was unstoppable, but the war was far from over. The final warning. As the human fleet pressed on, a final transmission came through the comms. It was from the Zur, or what was left of them. "We have failed." The transmission began, a tremor in the voice of the Zaire admiral. "But you are not the only ones who remember. There are others who will not stand by while you reclaim what you lost." Ralvik's blood ran cold as he listened to the warning. The message ended with one final declaration. "You have awakened the galaxy's most ancient enemies, and they are coming for you." The human fleet had torn through the galaxy like a storm, unstoppable and relentless. But as the Zaire retreat began to fade into the past, a new shadow emerged on the horizon, one darker, colder, and more ominous than anything the humans had ever faced before. Admiral Garius sat in the quiet of the command room, staring at the holographic map of the galaxy. The stars flickered with an eerie glow as he watched the movements of his fleet, but something gnawed at him. The warning from the Zaire echoed in his mind. "Ancient enemies," he muttered under his breath. The message had been clear. The Zur weren't the last obstacle humanity would face. Others were out there. But who? And what did they want? "Admiral," a voice interrupted his thoughts. The officer at the communications console spoke in a calm, steady tone. "We've detected an unusual energy signature in the aether belt. It doesn't match anything we've seen before." Garius leaned forward. The aether belt was known for its dangerous anomalies, a region of space where even the most advanced technologies struggled to survive. And now something was emerging from its depths. "Send a recon team," Garius ordered. "I want to know what's out there." "Full sensor sweep." The officer nodded and relayed the command. The bridge was filled with the soft hum of the ship's engines as the crew moved into action. Garius sat back in his chair, his fingers tapping anxiously on the console. Something was coming, and he could feel it in his bones. The aether belt. A mysterious arrival. The aether belt was a vast and treacherous part of the galaxy, where gravity fields collided and strange energy storms rage. Few ships dared to enter its borders, and fewer still returned unscathed. Yet here the human fleet was, hovering on the edge of its unknown depths, waiting to uncover what lay hidden within. The recon ships moved silently through the swirls of cosmic energy, scanning every corner of the region. Then, the first ship in the recon team encountered something enormous, something alive. "Admiral, you need to see this," came the urgent voice over the comms. It's a ship, but it's like nothing we've ever seen. It's massive, and it's approaching us." Garius' heart skipped a beat. He had known something was coming, but he wasn't prepared for the sheer size and power of the alien vessel. "Move the fleet into defensive formation," Garius barked. "All ships ready weapons, but hold fire. We don't know what we're dealing with." The massive ship, resembling a dark, twisted fortress, emerged from the clouds of the aether belt. Its surface was covered in thick, metallic plates, and strange symbols glowed faintly across its hull. The ship's presence sent an unnerving shiver through the entire human fleet. This was not a simple ship. It was a weapon, a vessel of unimaginable power. The first encounter. The ship, now clearly visible, was unlike anything humanity had ever encountered. It was ancient, its technology far beyond anything the humans had in their arsenal. A dark aura surrounded it, and Garius could feel the weight of its presence bearing down on his fleet. This wasn't just an alien ship, it was a challenge, a force to be reckoned with. "We've attempted to hail them," said the communications officer. "But there's no response. They're not answering our calls." "Prepare for combat," Garius said grimly. "We're not taking any chances." Just as the order was given, the alien vessel began to move, its engines glowing a deep red. The humans didn't wait for the enemy to strike first. Weapons were charged, and missiles were locked on target. But just as the human fleet prepared to fire, something impossible happened. The massive alien ship fired first, sending a wave of energy that split the darkness of space itself. The blast tore through the human fleet's shields, hitting ships with precision. The human warships shook under the force, their hulls groaning under the assault. Shields failing, the officer yelled. "We're taking damage, Admiral." Garius felt a cold shiver down his spine. The enemy had struck without warning, and their firepower was far superior. The humans were caught off guard, unable to fully retaliate. The battle for survival. As the battle raged, Garius realized the human fleet was in deep trouble. The alien vessel was too powerful, its weapons ripping through their defenses with ease. The humans' advanced technology couldn't keep up with the sheer strength of the attack. But Garius refused to back down. Humanity had faced impossible odds before, and they had always found a way to survive. "All ships, target their weapons systems," he ordered. "We need to take out their main gun, now." But just as the human ships launched their counterattack, the alien ship unleashed another terrifying burst of energy. This time, it split the Titan Ark's shields apart, sending shockwaves through the ship. Garius gripped the armrests of his chair, fighting against the growing sense of helplessness. This was no longer just a fight for victory. It was a fight for survival. A new war begins. The battle seemed endless. Ships were exploding, shields were failing, and the enemy was relentless. The humans, despite their power, were on the verge of being overwhelmed. But even in the face of defeat, Garius knew something the enemy didn't. Humanity would never stop fighting. The battle for the galaxy had only just begun, and if the humans were to survive, they would have to find a way to overcome this new and terrifying force. Prepared to fight to the last, Garius muttered, watching the battlefield unfold. "We will never give up." The war had changed. The galaxy had just become far more dangerous than anyone could have imagined. And in the silence between the battles, the only thing that was certain was that humanity's true test was yet to come. The battle had raged for days. Humanity's fleet was battered and bruised, but they held their ground. Yet despite the relentless onslaught from the massive alien ship, there was something unsettling about the silence that followed the clash. The enemy had disappeared into the vastness of space, leaving only the debris of the battlefield to mark their passing. Admiral Garius stood on the bridge, his face grim. The silence was deafening, but it was not the quiet of peace. It was the quiet of something far worse. The enemy was still up there, waiting, watching. "Sir," came a voice from the sensor station. "We've detected an anomaly, a pattern, in the depths of the Andromeda Rift." The Andromeda Rift was a region known for its strange gravitational anomalies and bizarre energy patterns. It was a place where even the most skilled navigators feared to tread. But if this was where the enemy had retreated, it was no coincidence. "Set course for the rift," Garius ordered. "Let's see what they're hiding." The fleet moved cautiously, their sensors scanning every inch of space as they entered the dangerous region. The rift was alive with chaos. Energy fields twisted and collapsed, making it difficult to keep track of the alien ship's movements. But then it happened. The fleet's sensors pinged once again. This time, the presence wasn't just a signature. It was a shadow, something vast, moving at an unnatural speed. "Admiral, we've got another ship, multiple ships," the officer exclaimed. "It's an ambush." A new fear. Before Garius could issue a command, a fleet of alien vessels appeared out of nowhere, surrounding the human ships. Their shapes were almost ghostly, shimmering with the dark energy that had become their trademark. They were not the same ships that had attacked before, but they shared the same deadly power. A chill ran down Garius' spine. This wasn't just a new enemy. It was a whole new species, with tactics and technology unlike anything they had faced. The first shots rang out. The alien ships opened fire with precision, their weapons cutting through human defenses like a knife through paper. Each strike seemed designed to strike fear into the hearts of those who fought back. But Admiral Garius was not a man who feared. He had seen the worst of the galaxy, and he had always come out on top. "Return fire," he commanded. "All ships target their lead vessel. We cannot allow them to surround us." The humans fired back with everything they had, but the enemy seemed to anticipate every move. Their ships dodged, countered, and retaliated with a deadly grace that seemed unnatural. It was as though they were always one step ahead. "This isn't just a fight against ships," Garius muttered to himself, watching the destruction unfold. "It's a fight against their strategy, their intellect. These enemies are different." Unmasking the enemy. In the chaos, Garius began to piece together a disturbing truth. The alien vessels weren't acting like a typical invasion force. They were targeting the human fleet's leadership. "Deploy the Aegis squads," Garius ordered. "We can't let them pick off our commanders." But it was already too late. The alien ships moved in on the flagship, sending beams of dark energy to disable its shields. The Titan arc shook violently under the assault, but the human fleet continued to fight back fiercely. Then, just as all hope seemed lost, a new signal appeared on the radar, a faint but unmistakable trace of something human. It was an emergency distress signal coming from the depths of the Andromeda Rift. The message was weak, garbled, but it was enough to send a ripple of hope through the fleet. There was someone out there, someone who had survived. "Send a team," Garius said, his voice steady despite the chaos. "We need to find that signal. It might be our only chance to turn this around." A new ally. A small team of elite soldiers was dispatched immediately to track down the source of the signal. As they journeyed deep into the rift, they encountered strange temporal distortions where time seemed to bend and warp. Every move felt like it took an eternity, but the soldiers pushed forward, determined to uncover the truth. At last, they arrived at a forgotten station hidden beneath the chaos of the rift. The walls of the station were cracked and scorched, but the technology inside was unlike anything the soldiers had seen before. "We found it," one of the soldiers said, breathless. "The signal's source. It's alive." And then, standing amidst the remnants of the ancient structure, they found him. A figure, clad in dark armor, with eyes that burned like molten fire. He was not human, but he had once been part of humanity's forgotten past. The truth hit them like a tidal wave. This was no ordinary ally. This was one of the original commanders from the lost human fleet. The secrets unveiled. The commander's name was Kaldor, and his story was one of tragedy and war. He had been the leader of a fleet that had vanished into the depths of space, hidden away for centuries, awaiting the moment when humanity's true test would come. "We've been waiting for you," Kaldor said, his voice deep and foreboding. "The galaxy was never meant to be ruled by the Zyre or any of the other pests you've encountered. There are forces out there that are older than the stars themselves, forces that even I cannot fully comprehend. But one thing I know for certain, we must stop them, or this galaxy will fall into darkness forever." The revelation of Commander Kaldor's existence was a turning point. The lost human fleet, thought to be nothing more than a myth, had been waiting in silence for the moment when humanity would need them most. The truth was clear now. The galaxy's fate rested on their shoulders. The human fleet, now under the guidance of Commander Kaldor, was preparing for the ultimate battle. The Zyre and their allies were more dangerous than anything they had ever encountered, but they had one advantage: Kaldor's fleet. These ships were not only powerful, but also equipped with ancient technology that could shift the balance of power in an instant. "We cannot let them destroy what we've built," Garius said, his voice filled with a newfound resolve. "We fight not just for survival, but for the future of all humanity." Under his command, the human fleet moved into position, their ships gleaming in the cold void of space. Each vessel was a reminder of what humanity had once been, and what they could become again. A dangerous plan. Kaldor had a plan. It was risky, audacious, But it was the only way to defeat the Zaire. They had to take the fight directly to the enemy's heart, their homeworld. If they could destroy the Zaire's central command station, they would cripple their ability to coordinate their forces. It would be the only way to end the war. The plan involved a direct assault on the heart of the Zaire Empire, a massive assault force that would be launched in waves. The goal was simple: break through the defenses, destroy the command center, and leave no survivors. Prepare for the final assault, Kaldor ordered. This is the moment we've been waiting for. We won't get another chance. As the fleet assembled, there was a heavy silence among the crews. The enormity of the mission weighed on them. This wasn't just a battle. This was the final stand. The battle begins. The first wave of ships shot forward, breaking through the Zaire's outer defenses with ruthless precision. The alien ships retaliated immediately, their weapons tearing through the human fleet with terrifying force. But humanity's ships, now reinforced by the ancient technologies of Kaldor's fleet, were stronger than ever. Explosions lit up the blackness of space as the two forces clashed in a violent spectacle. The human fleet's dreadnoughts opened fire, unleashing waves of energy blasts that rained down on the Zaire ships. But the Zaire were relentless. They struck back, their own weapons tearing through human shields, sending debris and fragments into the void. Garius stood on the bridge, his eyes locked on the unfolding battle. "Keep pushing forward. We can't stop now," he shouted. Kaldor's fleet joined the fray, and the tide of the battle began to shift. Their ancient warships tore through the enemy ranks with ease, their advanced weaponry overwhelming the Zaire's defenses. The human fleet was gaining ground, but the Zaire were far from finished. The last push. The final assault was underway. Humanity's fleet, battered but not broken, made its way toward the Zaire's central command station, a massive fortress located on their homeworld. The battle had drained them, but the prize ahead was worth the cost. "We're almost there," Garius said, his voice low. "Brace yourselves." As the fleet closed in on the command station, the Zaire launched a desperate counterattack. Waves of fighters and massive ships descended upon the humans, but this time there was no retreat. The human fleet held firm, pushing through the final line of defense. Then, with one final coordinated strike, the human ships launched their devastating weapons at the heart of the Zaire's fortress. A brilliant explosion lit up the galaxy as the Zaire command station crumbled into dust. The end of the war. With the destruction of the Zaire command station, the war was effectively over. The remaining Zaire ships, leaderless and scattered, were picked off by the human fleet. There was no longer any resistance. The galaxy was free, and humanity had won. On the bridge of the flagship, Admiral Garius looked out at the stars, a quiet pride settling in his chest. "We did it. We've ended the war." But Commander Kaldor, standing at his side, remained silent. He knew this victory was not just the end of the war, it was the beginning of a new era. "We've given the galaxy its future," Kaldor said quietly. "But we must not forget that peace is fragile. We will need to be ready for whatever comes next." Epilogue. The human fleet, now victorious, began to repair and rebuild. The galaxy was at peace for the first time in years, but the memory of the war and the sacrifices made would never fade. Humanity had stood against the darkness, and they had emerged victorious. But even as the celebrations began, a quiet whisper echoed through the stars. The universe was vast, and who knew what challenges awaited them in the future? But for now, humanity could rest, knowing they had faced the unknown and come out on top.